gardening is the number one avocation, leisure activity in the United States. I used to describe the community gardens as the basketball courts for the elderly.
Community is what it's all about. Community is important.
It become part of you because you have gotten this body of people who are so generous and kind and don't mind giving you the time to show you how to do things. We reap the benefit together. We share the food.
Community gardens are vital, actually, because they build community. I mean, when you look at what is a community, what's the definition of community, it's how a neighborhood organizes, it's how a neighborhood relates to each other, and community gardens brings people together.
Sharing stories, sharing time, sharing seeds, so you're really in the dirt together. I think it helps make the world better. I think. Community by community.
It's probably the most important thing in the world. Growing things that you can eat. Food is medicine. Good food is good medicine.
When you think of many of the bigger cities all over the country, and Boston being an example, Cincinnati, Baltimore, you name it, New York, there was a lot of immigrants at that time, as well as a whole bunch of folks that had come from the South in the Great Migration. So a lot of people that were living in the city, which is also the case today, were from agrarian cultures. So those folks, at that time, we didn't have enormous choices in our supermarkets. We had more local markets, and folks were missing the food that they were accustomed to eating, cooking, sharing, that represented their diet, their culture, and they were close to the land. Not everybody, but a lot of folks that started to grow in these patches of soil that seemed to be abandoned, looked abandoned, started that way. They just took over the land. They did not ask permission. There was no threat. There wasn't this tremendous, very real challenge between housing and open space. That came a little later.
I grew up in Greenwood, Mississippi, big farming country, and my mother grew all her own vegetables. We were self-sufficient, even though we lived in the city part of the state, we lived in a small town. Everybody grew their own backyard gardens. We all had kitchen gardens. When I came to Boston, I was in a 3-story walk-up, but I had a fire escape. In the first year here, I planted some greens and a tomato plant on the fire escape in a bucket. And a year later, I bought a house. And a small house, but a great, huge double lot for a yard. And spring came and I started digging. And I haven't stopped since. And that was in 1970.
I've loved gardening all my life. I started gardening with my father in Columbus, Ohio during the war. We had a victory garden down the street from our house, and I used to love to go down there with my father. He would come home after a long day of work and put the tools in the trunk of the old Chevrolet, and I would beg to be allowed to ride in the trunk with the tools, the 3 blocks down to our victory garden, and I've loved it ever since.
I came in this garden in 1976 under Miss Barrow. So I never will forget, I asked Miss Barrow, "Miss Barrow, you got a garden I can have up here?" She said, "Annie, I got a garden up there that you can have. It's right over by the bushes, the rose bushes. They had rose bushes around at that time." And so I said, "Oh yeah?" And I said, "Well, I'll go up and look at it." I came up and looked at it. It was some turnip greens coming up in the garden. So I goes back down there. I said, "Miss Barrow, you gave me somebody else's garden. It's some turnip greens coming up in there." She said, if you don't get up and down here, she said, I told you that's your garden, now that's your garden. Now, you could have had collard greens growing about big enough to eat now while you coming down here bothering me. So she was always so funny. Whatever what she tell you, that's the way it was.
I'm the one that has the green thumb for the most part in my family, and I like to say that plants, like indoor plants, were my gateway drug to gardening. I had a lot of indoor plants. I started collecting them when I lived in New York and have moved them now 2 additional times to Boston. And that's how I sort of got started. I really just loved growing things, and I realized that I was pretty good at it. And I started sort of leveling up my plant game and decided that I wanted to have a garden outside, and was looking for ways to do that when this came along.
So really the only reason that I'm even at this garden is because of my friend Jimena. And she came and found me at the office one day. We work together. We work in global health research. And down the road, we come here for lunch all the time, and she kind of said, all right, let's garden together. And I'm like, what are you talking about? So she brought me down here, showed me what it was about, and ever since, we've been spending our lunch hours here. We've been going to Home Depot after work, planning, going to Allendale Farm, figuring out what we're gonna do. It's just been incredible, and I think one of the best things about community gardens in general is just how much it strengthens friendships, so.
Oh, Julia.
Ed Cooper, working for RAP, Roxbury Action Program, took a census of senior citizens in this neighborhood to bring them together and foster a sense of community. Community is what it's all about. Yeah. Those who want to put up big buildings, they walk by each other, don't even speak to each other.
Yeah.
We didn't grow up that way.
Yeah.
We don't want to live that way. Community is important.
It opens people up to discussion and talking to one another, right? In our small little world of our garden, but also in the neighborhood, right? There are people that I would probably have never spoken to except for the fact that I'm here. I've been sitting around playing, and there's a walkway back there, and so people will see you and they'll just hang out for a while and just talk to you about it. I feel like I've probably invited several people into the garden that way. For me, I think gardening makes sure that I'll get outside every single day, right? And check on something or play with something or want to mess around, and it's almost irrelevant of the weather. And so I think for a city, it's important just to have these spaces so that people can do that. It's nice to get outside, and I don't know, I feel like it's really sad when you see, when you lose green space just to building. And I guess I realize it has to happen, but wherever you can save it, I think it's important.
I think from a community point of view, before this garden was here, it was just an empty lot that sat. And, there wasn't anything bad happening, it was just an empty lot. But I think that having the garden here, people will walk by and they stop and they look at it, they can come in, they will speak. I've talked to a lot of people just walking by when I've been working in my own plot that will ask questions. I've shared, a lot of basil with the house that lives next door, so it definitely fosters a better sense of community. I think that people are talk to each other more that may not have ever met before. It gives a beautiful space, to look at and to be able to enjoy.
We're in the middle of Boston. It's a very liberal city, but I just think it's a testament to the people who live in this community, and you don't always notice that when you just go to the store or you're walking around. So it's nice to see people show up, and it doesn't really matter where you're from, who you are, what you do for work. It's just nice to talk, and we have some common ground. So it's always rewarding to come down here and meet new people.
What we want this to be is our neighborhood's backyard. And we want to be able to have neighborhood events here, and have a place where we can gather and make this feel like a real community. And that has really been realized over these years.
This gives us a little island of green where people can produce food, get some exercise, be part of a little community. And there's a certain intimacy with growing things. I may not know where a lot of these people live, and I don't, but I know a lot about what they garden and a different side of them, and that's all that counts out here.
And it's fun.
Yeah.
I mean, you come here and you've put something in the ground, and then a week later, wow, this is coming up, and then it's coming up even more, and then in a couple of months you can actually eat the produce from there. So I think that's part of it. It really is sort of a wonderful thing to see.
It keeps you active. It is a physical activity. It's great to be outside in all kinds of weather. You get to know your neighbors. You get to grow your own food and see where it comes from and enjoy it. It just, the benefits are so positive and so important to community building in general that I'd encourage anybody to get involved in a community garden.
So for me, being in a community garden is just worth the while. And I just love it with the fresh air, getting your hands dirty, doing all the amazing things that gardeners do. And I'm so glad that I learned to do this because it's become part of my life. And I just enjoy coming here.
I think it's important for people who live in apartments to get outside and encourage people to not stay, just stay in your place and watch TV, whatever, but get out and enjoy it. Boston's a wonderful city.
It provides space for folks to not only grow food to sustain themselves, but also it creates natural gathering places for folks to come together, to meet each other. A lot of the gardeners here are our neighbors, and we would have never met them otherwise. My dad's learned a lot from the other folks who've been here a lot longer. I mean, we've been here 15 years, but this garden's been around for 40 years, yeah.
To simply come, grow their food, just relax, sit out in the open. It's like a little oasis, a peaceful oasis, which people need.
This is a place where we can where we really enjoy hanging out with people. It's notable, probably other people have said that there are 7 languages spoken in the garden, and it's just an extraordinary thing, the amount of knowledge that people have.
And I have friends who come down, and just to come down and have coffee chats, and people in the neighborhood would just come get a cup of coffee or something. They would just come here and read or just sit in the garden, and enjoy it. And I said, you don't have to be a gardener to enjoy the garden.
We are all one. And many of the people who come from warm countries, they like to bring their habits with them. And so when the community garden started developing, I met so many wonderful friends from Dominican Republic, from Jamaica, from Haiti, from down south, who have all their different skills, and some like to share and some don't. The majority of folks like to share their ideas on how they're successful to grow a bean, how they're successful to grow corn, how they're successful with the soil, and what do they do about the weeds. And it's just a nice community area to have fun with, be out in the sun, get some more vitamin D in my old system, you know what I mean?